Hello people. I had a video a while back which I thought was quite important, but that most people ignored, called Personal Experiences of Neptune's Transit. Now this video is following on from that theme. It's a conclusion to that theme, and it is also in the area of things that I talk about that I know that other people don't like. So when I used to do my own personal astrology stories previously on videos I've now deleted about regular astrology, those were always the videos that got the least views. And that's fair enough. I mean, people want information that's generalizable and potentially useful to themselves. But the reason I do this is because I'm the one that knows my life. I'm the one that lives 24/7 with my life, as we all do. So my insights into my own chart are the only way I can explain some really deep things. I feel those things are important in that I may want to refer back to them, and it's good to try and explain some of these things. But I recognise that not everyone's interested. Anyway, so in that video I talked about an experience I was having that seemed to relate strongly, correlate with Neptune's transit of the gate 36. It would always come up as something I needed to re-experience, re-examine around transits over significant points, station retrogrades, things like that. And the problem I was having was that I was kind of stuck between two poles. I had my meditation and my human design types of stuff, like wisdom types of stuff, politics even, on the right here. And I had energy healing, which is something that I've looked at, on the left. But it felt like these two were at war with each other. So when I would do energy work, when I did some meditation, I'd break out of the feelings that I had while I was doing energy work. And there was this push and pull, this spinning between two poles a whole lot. This dynamic has been very key to difficult experiences in my life, and I think a lot of us must experience this kind of thing quite deep within us. Maybe expresses in a very different way, maybe for some people it's a more physical, real-world decision. But I've always been interested in the mechanics of how I would experience something like this. For context first, I will add that I really wanted to be a healer. I have quite a few health conditions. The healing feels good initially. The visualizations and stuff, they feel good. But what eventually happens, and I didn't have an explanation for this until just recently, is that I start going into not self. I start feeling this unbelievable anger. And I experience quite a lot of misery as well. The healing is the antithesis to the direction that does seem to make me happy, and that is meditation and music. It's very frustrating. As I said, I really wanted to be a healer, and I wanted a lot of its benefits. As I sit here right now, I have a slight pain in my knee. I would like to do energy stuff on that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to explain the energy of the healing going through my chart in just a second. But where I get the most positive, spontaneous joy, the kind of joy that makes everyone around me happier, the kind of joy that fixes the world into this intuitive place where things flow, that happens through meditation and music. I'll take it through step by step then. Splenically defined, so my first impulse comes out of that 43 through to the 26. I think this is relevant to my semi-religious viewpoint. The answer for me as to how do you fit in is to pay attention to those things. It also is a lot of my output here, a lot of my output in general, and a quasi-political way of thinking. But once all that knowledge has been gathered, it can go one of two ways, shown by the light blue ticks here. It can go the way of my actual chart through the 2145, or it can go the way of this quasi-projector sort of mindset of 5125. I'm going to bring in another concept which I was going to bring in another video just now, because it's something that I think applies here and is relevant. One important thing I've wanted to bring in is a chart of someone called Stefan Molyneux, who is a philosopher that I have quoted here before. I've paid a lot of attention to his material. I find it very correct, inspiring, etc. He talks a lot about values, virtues, stuff like that. And he does have a G self channel going into the throat. The angle I was going to talk about this from is that even though human design is a supposedly amoral system, as talked about by Ra Uru Hu, it's strange that everyone that has a G self gate going through to the throat seems to have a strong virtue-based philosophy. But I haven't done that video yet. But it has led me to thoughts of how people work. This is how I think I work, in a sense. I think the channels are very important because I think that's where the person starts. That's the more intimate connection for the person. Obviously, as we know from the human design, once we have a channel, each center on either side of that is made defined. Why is that? Well, I think the experiences that channel brings in beckons the energy on either side of the channel. So for me, we'll do this with the 5125. I have the 51.1 twice in my design. One of those is Venus. These are experiences one has in life of overwhelming shock. And according to Ra Uru Hu, who had this in one of his moons, people that have this in their chart are able to tolerate shock that people without the 51.1 wouldn't be able to tolerate. So I experience those things. I have insight into those things. In life, in general, it's almost like there's two classes sometimes, two types of people. The people that have experienced some sort of trauma and shock, and the people that haven't. And the people that have experienced something really difficult and deep tend to live on this slightly different world to the people that are not inclined to look at things so deep. So you have the people at the side with the trauma who just can't take the gossip, they just don't care. And then you have the people who haven't experienced such a thing getting absolutely obsessed with gossip and things that don't seem to matter so much. Of course, this is very rough. A lot of people who become traumatized really don't deal with it and become the worst gossips of them all, and vice versa. But it is a bit of a pattern, I think. So because of that, this 51.1 is a unique experience, and it leads on to the 25.6. Now the 25.6 doesn't hold itself in. It just states what it sees, what the world is. Now this channel is projected, so perhaps that doesn't always happen with me, but it's part of the energy of being able to openly talk about things, perhaps indirectly, but the energy to just confront these things is there. This then brings in two energies. It brings in the willpower for the shock, and it brings in, from the 25, all of the virtue-based philosophies, ideas and such to help the individual through whatever situation this has created. What situation where someone has a deep insight into things such as trauma might require the G-self energy. I theorize, especially as it's a projected channel, ostracism could come in here. Perhaps people don't want to hear the insights. And there has to be some difference between the person that has the insights and gets ostracized and the person without that channel. But now the G self is defined, someone else with a defined G center, with a defined message in that sense, can communicate to that other G center, can copy as such, and that's partly how communication happens between people. Then it feeds back to the channel itself and back to the person. That's how I think it happens. But with someone like Stefan Molyneux, who has a G self channel into the throat, all of whatever is happening here goes up into the throat, it gets talked about. Whereas with me, the energy goes into the G self. Perhaps the person isn't invited, but we'll get into that in a second. And so this energy has nowhere to go. It's stuck within the person. This brings me to healing then, and why something as amazing for me as healing, energy healing, can't be used by me with this design, or at least one of the problems I currently experience with it. Rather than go into the manifesting channel, the 2145, which isn't very useful in relation to energy healing for me, whereas music is, we'll come to that as well. All of this experience, all of these grudges, and all of this philosophy as it's applied gets expanded, because healing is a very heart chakra thing. That expansion doesn't have anywhere to go because the person isn't a projector, they're a manifester. So it just becomes a seething, miserable rage. And so this person has a lot of willpower energy, and as we've talked about in other videos, such as the mystery of interaction, certain individuals are meant to hold a certain amount of, well, pain. Actually, the word in the Law of One session I'm referring to was pain. So let's now consider this through music, through the proper way of experiencing. The 2145 is very engaged in music because music is very valuable, and the 2145 is very involved in bringing value to the situation. It's also very detached, so it's very good at things like wisdom, at least my channel is. So if we think of things like music or this, when I play music, I can surprisingly bring out emotions that don't have another way to come out, and they'll be expressed in a very unbelievably positive and metaphorical way, often bringing in things that give me insights into the situation. So a song that I had about a girl that I was toing and fro with, there'd been a lot of emotion, but it'd gone really wrong, was "The night has grown dark, memories of you drift into the shadows of all we've been through." Kind of this surreal gothic theme. And when you get all these emotions that are in this G self, they can be invited out by my own chart. And that's mostly what I was going to say. I talked in a recent video about, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of our emotions can't really be sorted out until the more negative side of our world stage as such is gotten rid of. And I will just show two images of that here. This is the image of things being confused, and then this is a slightly modified image of things starting to get better when that negative force is removed. In the first image, nothing can be done. The only thing that can be done is to push ahead. And so that's everything. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.